Number 1. Country house. A lot of places have those scary or haunted places that everyone in the area knows about. There is always a story behind it. Most of the time I'm sure these stories are probably BS, but I guess it is possible that some of them might be true. But you never really can tell, since many of those stories happened so long ago. First, I should mention that this story does not take place in the United States. I think there is a certain amount of assumption that most of these sorts of stories do when they are shared. I won't say exactly where it does take place, but we speak English as a first language. We also have tons of really supposed haunted locations, or locations where scary things are said to have happened. In my area, it was an old and abandoned house out in the country. It was a bit of a drive out of town, so a lot of the teenagers in school talked about it, but they rarely ever went out to it. It is a little harder to get a driver's license here, and many teenage students are not drivers. So getting to the house was a bit far out of the way. On Halloween that year, though, a friend of mine who did have his license decided that he wanted to go out and see the house that year. It didn't take very much to convince the rest of us to join him. I had been in the car dozens of times when my parents were driving through the hills in the area, so checking it out on Halloween would be pretty entertaining. To drive out there that night was pretty fun too. There were 6 of us all together, which made the car pretty cramped. We waited until after dark to even go out there, I guess in order to make it seem scarier, since it was Halloween. At no point did I think that it wasn't a good idea for us to go to that house. I actually wasn't scared at all. Hell, we even got to the house and I didn't find it very scary either. All of us got out of the car after we pulled into the yard of the house. The yard was pretty big, and there were tons of overgrown plants in the yard. There were no lights in the yard, and obviously none in the house or on the roads. So the lights that we brought with us were the only ones that we had. We started walking up to the house, slowly from the car. I had a flashlight on ahead of me, so I could see better, and one other had one too. My friend kept shining his ahead of us up on the house. I watched as he moved his light on the house, checking out different parts of it. I stopped, though, when I saw something on the porch of the house. Although I only caught a glimpse of it when his light shined on it, I definitely saw something that was out of place. But rather than ask my friend to shine his light back on it, I set my own flashlight on it myself. I stopped my friend from walking closer to the house. There was a pumpkin sitting on the porch of the house. It wasn't an old decaying pumpkin that we would have expected to see in an abandoned house either. I told them that I thought that someone must be living at the house for a freshly carved pumpkin to be out there. My friends didn't care. They reasoned that it was Halloween, and we were probably not the only kids to take a visit to the old house. Someone probably left it there as a joke. I accepted this, and we began walking closer up to the house. We were still walking when I heard another noise coming up from the side of the house. I shined my light over in the area just in time to catch someone coming up from the side of the house. There was a man on the side of the house, who I caught creeping around the corner of it. He was already watching us when the light hit him, and that is when I saw the huge knife in his hand. When the guy realized that we had seen him, he began coming at us rather quickly. Fortunately, all of my friends had seen him, and we had turned and began running very quickly back toward the car. One look back as I was getting myself into the car revealed the guy was still after us, although he wasn't moving very well. It was like he was hobble running. I'm not sure how else to describe it. The man made it up to the car before we began driving out, but we were able to escape before any real damage was done to anyone. 2 of my male friends were laughing though, and the rest of us didn't know why, but then they told us that they had set the entire thing up, having another male friend go ahead of us and come out to scare us. His name was Liam. The rest of us were pretty pissed off, but after a while, had to admit it was a good scare and a good joke. However, the following day, those 2 male friends had some harrowing news for us. Liam had been at the house, but he never got the chance to pretend to attack us. Someone had attacked him and scared the crap out of him. He had jumped on his motorbike and headed far away from the house before we ever got a chance to arrive. We have no idea who tried to attack us that day or why. Number 2. Halloween Party. I only once went to a Halloween costume party and never went to one again. It was a party held by a popular kid in high school, and so I felt lucky that I was invited at the time. However, I didn't feel that way as the party went on. I guess since I wasn't popular at all, I should have wondered why I was invited. But there were so many people there that I thought everyone was invited. The party itself was pretty okay, although I felt pretty awkward being there. I mean, no one I knew, as far as I could tell, was there, and the whole thing was pretty uncomfortable. So I think after being there for a while, I got tired of feeling so alone with so many people around. So I decided that I would slip out and go home. I got into my car and began driving home. I lived on the other side of the neighborhood, but I wasn't too far away. I was feeling pretty down though, because it pretty much seemed like I had wasted the entire night. Before I turned off of the road that the party house was on, I glanced up into my rearview mirror. Someone, wearing a scarecrow costume, was in the back seat of my car. They were just sitting there, behind me. As soon as I noticed and gasped, the person grabbed me from behind with their hands around my neck. I instinctively hit the brakes on the car. Even though I wasn't going fast, I could feel the scarecrow hit the back of my seat. However, he didn't take his grip off of me. He wasn't strangling me really, but I did find it hard to breathe. I grabbed something in the passenger seat of the car. I don't recall what it was, but I was able to hit the scarecrow upside the head with it. He yelped in pain and then let go of me. I turned around to try and hit him again, getting him in the shoulder. The guy yelled and then opened the door of the car and ran out, leaving the door open. He ran behind a house and was completely out of sight. I didn't care. I just grabbed the door, closed it, and got home as soon as I could. I learned from one of my friends that one of the kids in school saw to it that I got invited because he hated me, and saw it as an opportunity to scare the crap out of me. I never was able to know whether this was true or not, because he was wearing a mask. But it made sense, if that was why I, a not-so-popular kid, was invited to the party to begin with. Number 3. Shortcut. We used to go trick-or-treating by ourselves when we were children. We lived on military housing, and for the most part, it was more than safe for kids to go by themselves. Military security would be around. Plus, this was back in the days, long before kids did nearly everything supervised. We would also be around tons of other kids doing their own thing, so the streets were very crowded. I was pretty young at the time, but I can't really tell you how young. I must have been 10 or under at the time. Anyway, I had gone out with my friends from school that evening, and we were out a significant time after it got dark. This was also pretty normal for the time period, and the era that we lived in. Now, what wasn't normal was that I decided to walk home with my friends, and one of my buddies lived on the edge of military housing. It was a bit of a walk from there back to my place, and it was pretty scary to think of doing it alone. However, it was Halloween, and everyone wants to have at least a minor scare on Halloween. By this time, the trick-or-treating had mostly died out. There were a few stragglers still visiting other homes, but they were mostly older kids. They often would wait until the younger kids had their time out, and then go afterward. As I was walking home, I decided to cut through a park that I played in a lot. I really wasn't scared, but thought it would be nice to try and be scared a bit. It was really dark in the park, and this was decades ago. There were no lights in the park, as kids weren't supposed to be playing there at night. The only lights would occasionally be from the backyards of the houses in that area. Of course, being Halloween, most people had their lights out. It was creepy walking back there, but I wasn't really scared. Plus, I didn't walk through the middle of the park. I was more on the edge of the backyards. I was surprised, though, when I saw a light go on in the house that I was walking by. The back door opened and an older man came out of the house. He started coming up to me, calling me boy, and trying to get my attention. I felt immediately uncomfortable, but I did stop in case there was something innocent he wanted. He immediately began asking me about my Halloween candy. He kept asking me if I got any full-size candy bars. Of course, no one gave anything like that out. So he immediately told me that he had all types of full-size candy bars for trick-or-treaters. He would be happy to give me some, but he added that if I wanted them, I had to come into his house with him to get them. I definitely didn't want to, and I told him I had to get home. The guy then began to sound a bit more aggressive, telling me how many bars he would give me. When I kept telling him no, he kept following me, and I began to get worried. Finally, when I wasn't agreeing to come into his home with him, he grabbed me by my arm and tried to pull me back into the house with him. Alarmed, I tried pulling away from him, but of course, I was just a little kid, and he was an adult. He was pulling me back toward his house, and I did the best thing that a little kid could do against a grown man in that situation. I hauled off and hit him right in the balls, causing him to double over and lose his grip on me. I immediately started running as fast as I could, with the man yelling and cursing at me, telling me he would get me and such shit. I didn't care. I just wanted to get home, and I continued to run until I got there. I didn't tell anyone about it because the whole situation made me feel unclean. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but I didn't want anyone to know, and I never played at that park again. Number 4. The Mirror. Note: this story was sent to me by an old friend from high school. It amuses me because this is about a story that he and I made up that apparently is circulated as being true. I believe I told the story in a previous video, but I don't recall for sure. My school has their own version of Bloody Mary or Candyman, depending upon which of those stories you're more familiar with. There was actually an article in a school newspaper about it a while back, which I found in the school library. Apparently there was a janitor who worked at the school named Mabel, although I always thought that Mabel was a girl's name, and it was supposedly a male janitor. But the story went that he was killed in one of the restrooms of the school, and if you went into the bathroom and said, "Bloody Mabel" 5 times, he would appear in one of the toilet stalls and kill you if you couldn't get out of the bathroom in time. I guess around the time the article was written, there were frequent closings of the bathrooms, and the article claimed that this was because unlucky kids were killed and the janitors had to clean up the mess. Of course, when asked why there were no reports of the kids missing, it was because the school board was trying to cover up the deaths. Well, when October and Halloween came around, it became popular for students to head into the bathrooms and try this out. For all 4 years that I was in high school, this was a pretty popular thing to do. Of course, you had to do it either after school, or you had to cut class in order to do it, because it wasn't scary if you did it when the halls were full of other kids. I decided that during my sophomore year that I was going to do it. I was involved in a play at school, and during rehearsals, we were generally the last people to leave the building. I would stay and help the guy who was doing the sets because I had some minor artistic ability. He and I would very often be leaving the school late in the evening, when the whole school was dark and empty. He had a car and drove home, but I lived pretty close to the school and walked, so we exited on different parts of the school. I had the longer walk, and walking down the dark and empty hallways was always a little freaky to begin with. It didn't help that it was October, and I was already feeling the Halloween spirit that year. As I was closing into the hallway that led to the exit I would be taking from the school, I saw that one of the bathrooms was closed off. I immediately thought of the school's urban legend and got really curious. I hadn't seen any janitors, and it didn't seem like anyone was in the bathroom, so I thought I would sneak in and check it out. I didn't turn on the light because I didn't want to draw the attention of a custodian if they were walking down the hall, but I used the flashlight on my phone to look around and see what I could see. I was hoping there would be some indication of why the bathroom was closed off. Perhaps there would have been something showing the presence of a kid who had been attacked in there. There wasn't anything. Now, I really wasn't expecting there to be, but I did have hopes. And further, I didn't want to see evidence of a dead kid because that is just morbid and wrong, but something creepy would have been nice. Before I was about to walk out, I glanced over at one of the mirrors. I saw the reflection of one of the bathroom stalls in that mirror. The door was open, but I decided that I would close it and then perhaps try the ritual. So with a bit of trepidation, I closed the door and went to the mirror. I said Bloody Mabel 5 times, which was the number mentioned in the newspaper article. I waited for a few tense moments for something scary to happen. I maybe half expected something, and my heart was probably beating hard in my chest at the time. But nothing did, and I decided, as is normally the case with these things, that it was just a story. I turned and began walking out. As I did, as if caused by a strong wind, even though there were no open windows in the restroom, the stall door that I closed slammed open. I looked in the mirror for a split moment and saw that it had indeed opened, but that was a fleeting moment because I ran out of that bathroom faster than I had ever done anything in my life. I jumped over the barrier that was in front of the door and ran down the hallway and out the door. I stopped running when I got across the street from the school. I don't know why, but I just felt safer being there. It's like there was some magic barrier not being on school property. I don't think most people believed me when I told them what happened. I think people have a tendency to doubt stories like that, but the same people who doubted me noticed that I wouldn't be the last one leaving the school ever again. I truly got scared. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. First, I want to thank all my paid Patreon subscribers, starting with my 2 VIPs, Chiamerah Cat and Pixie Hopper 8. I also want to thank Stinky News, EricaOdd, Tracy Sellars, Chronic J, and Heidi H. I'm sorry I've been kind of quiet the past couple weeks. I've been trying to save up some stories for Halloween, so October would be a more active month, so we'll see how that goes. Also, I've been a little bit down because, if you remember, I was really excited about that possum that was coming into my room, but I unfortunately have not seen him in over 2 weeks, so I pretty much accepted the fact that he's probably not coming back. That's been a little bit depressing for me. I just hope that he is okay wherever he is, and I do have pictures of him. He was just really nice to have around for a while. I never really thought about possums much beforehand, but I really am a fan now. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please hit the subscribe button and the bell so you'll be notified of new videos. Leave me a comment, which I will do my best to get back to, and share the video with someone you think might enjoy it. And if you have an original story you want narrated on Killer Orange Cat, my address is in the description to the channel. And now, I'd like to thank my free Patreon members, Lori Hicks, Lisa Herman, Anthony Bowers, Remi, Venikins, Rose Metro, Woofer McWooferson, Cindy Cleveland, Vanapira Rayne, William H., Alien Unicorn 13, Kathryn Lynch, The Bama Guy 334, Michael Vasquez, Bonnie Lynn, Collet Bond, Krista Pike, Prince UVA, HF Creations, Bonnie Gibbs, Linda Moore, DJ Lira, and Evil Black Cat. But most importantly, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Halloween Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.